Hello, and welcome to another episode on how to train your horse girl. My name is Rednu, and my videos are very long, so we're going to get right into it. In this video, we're going to be going over what each stat does, and a general guide on how to build Umas according to their style and distance preferences. If you guys learn anything from this video, make sure you guys give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe for more Umamusume guides. Let's get into it. All right, so we're going to be talking about stats and strats. Before talking about stats, during the career, it's important to note that all stats are padded by 400. Keep in mind also that you are racing other Umas, right? It's always a competition, so even if you don't meet certain thresholds, even with the padding, it doesn't matter if your competition also doesn't meet the thresholds. Speed, power, and stamina are affected by terrain types and conditions, but we'll have to get into that in a different video. Before we talk about stats, it's also important to know what aptitudes are and like how they affect stats. So if you take a look here at my game, we have 3 different types of aptitudes: track, distance, and style. Anything that is an A rating is your Uma performing at their baseline, right? At 100% capacity. However, if there is an S rating, which you can get from inspiration events, check out my other guides if you don't know what inspiration events are, you will get a 5% boost. Unless you're talking about style, then it's a 10% boost. Anything below A rating is when you'll start to suffer from penalties that severely limit how well your horse girl will perform. Track aptitude affects acceleration, distance aptitude affects speed, and style aptitude affects wit, but not skill activation rate. This is pretty important to note because that means you can pretty freely switch style as long as your stats are built for it, as long as you have like good skills for it, right? You'll see pretty good success. But generally speaking, an Uma has skills that are suited to their preferred styles. So let's first talk about speed. This determines the top velocity during late race and last spurt phases. It doesn't affect speed at any other point. At the other points, speed is mostly determined by what position your horse girl wants to race in. This is the most important stat for any Uma for any distance. And for the most part, Umas have very similar speeds throughout the race until they reach that late race phase. Getting blocked, so if your Umamusume has something in front of it, right, another horse girl, then that limits their speed that they can run in. The next stat to talk about is stamina. This affects how much endurance, also known as HP, an Uma has during a race. You need enough HP in order to prevent your Uma from burning out. And different strategies will convert stamina to HP, but at different rates. So late searchers have the baseline conversion rate, and pace chasers have the least efficient conversion rate, often needing 11% more. HP is consumed by simply running, and the more speed, the faster your Umamusume is going, the more the stamina will also be depleted, or the HP. It can be recovered via skills. This is the most popular skill. This is Swinging Maestro. This is given by the Super Creek SSR card, and it's a gold skill. It says recover endurance on a corner with efficient turning. These skills are seen as essential, especially for long distance runners. Having these gold skills that recover your HP will allow you to compensate for a lack of stamina stat. Also important to note that the more stamina you have, the more HP these recovery skills recover. Here are the end of career stamina thresholds you would need in order to clear the URA finale. This is what I typically aim for. You will hear a lot and see a lot of different ones from other guides. Note that this does not include padding, so it's whatever you see on the screen without you doing any more addition. In order to clear sprint tracks, you basically don't need any stamina whatsoever. Mile tracks you would want to see at the end of your career at least 300. Mid you would want around 450, and long distance you would have, or you would want at least 550 and above. The next stat is power. This affects the top rate of acceleration your Uma can reach and the ability to change lanes. It also reduces the speed reduction when running uphill. Later positions, so late surger and end closer, the later you get, the more power you need, starting with pace chasers, but pace chasers don't need that much power. They need some of it. Later positions need more power in order to overtake, because their whole strategy is to wait until the end to accelerate at a very high rate and pass and overtake the competition. Also, they need to avoid getting boxed in, which is where the ability to change lanes comes in. The fourth stat is Guts. This affects the value and duration of various bonuses an Uma can gain during their last spurt. However, these bonuses are not that important and they're not that strong, at least in this current version of the game. Later on, guts will become a little more important. But as of right now, it also lowers HP consumption during the late race and last spurt phases, and it is by far the least important stat. But that being said, guts builds do exist, at least for deck building, because the training provides speed and power at the same time. The last stat we want to talk about is wit. This affects an Uma's skill activation rate below without padding. This is the rates at which they activate. So basically what the game does is it checks the skill's sort of activation conditions, right? Some of the conditions here, like in Swinging Maestro, it says recover endurance on a corner with efficient turning. So you have to be on a corner in order for Swinging Maestro to activate. Why it's so strong is because every race course has a corner. What happens is when the conditions are met, then it rolls a dice, right, with these percentage chance of success, depending on your wit stat, and it'll see if your stat is able to activate. This is without padding, so note that if you don't have any wit built up, you're basically at a baseline always at 70%, at least during career. But typically you want to make sure that your Umas are good for PvP, so try to get it at least to 300, and the other ones are pretty much extra. Also important to note that there is always a chance your skill won't activate, so there's no way to guarantee them. Wit also affects how likely your Uma will rush during the race. So if you ever see this status effect right here, that's what being rushed looks like. What it does is it makes it so that your HP consumption rate goes up by 60%, so you'll lose a lot of stamina very quickly. Your horse girl will also abandon their strategy and style of running, so they'll try and push ahead and basically adopt the strategy of whatever strategy is in front of them. And the duration for being rushed is variable. It also allows your Uma to take advantage of downhill portions. There are downhill parts of some race courses, and this will allow you to increase speed and decrease HP consumption rate. You shouldn't be focusing on building wit too much unless you're building a front runner. Wit is mostly naturally built because its training provides energy and stats. So the key takeaway of all this is that speed is king. Power is needed, but it's more important the further back your Uma prefers to run. So late surgers and end closers definitely want more power. Stamina is as needed depending on what tracks your Uma needs to run. Guts has niche strategies and niche builds, but can be completely avoided basically. It will be buffed later. And Wit should be trained in order to reach 300 at least. And typically you're going to do Wit training in order to gain energy with stats. Next, we're going to be talking about strategies or styles of racing. So the first strategy is front runner. This is a type of Uma that wants to stay in front from start to finish. Whoever is first is the pacemaker and determines the pace for every other Uma, the pace that they need to run in. This means that they also determine how fast HP is being consumed for everyone. In terms of stat priority, front runners want a lot of speed, and they also want some wit as well. And they need some power too, but not too much. Generally speaking, you can avoid building power on a front runner because speed training gives you power. And of course, stamina is needed by distance. The reason why front runners are very wit reliant is because they rely on a handful of skills in order to avoid positioning mistakes. So like concentration will avoid late starts. They will want to activate skills to fight for being in first position because they have very strong skills that require them to be in first position. So an example of that is early lead. Early lead is a skill to fight for being first position, and final push is a skill that only activates if your Uma is in first place by the final corner. Here are the examples of front runner racers in this version of the game. Now we have pace chasers. So pace chasers want a lot of speed, obviously, and they also need power. Power basically takes the place of wit for front runners, in that it's a secondary training. Stamina is as needed by distance. Typically, they want like 10% more than others because they have the worst stamina to HP conversion. That being said, despite that, pace chasers are the most straightforward, and I'm pretty sure like most Umas have pace chaser as a strategy that they can use. The reason why is because they can conserve more energy than frontrunners can, because frontrunners will be running at top speeds for the entire duration. And also among the positions that are not frontrunners, they have the least chance of getting blocked. They also have the most flexible skill pool. So examples of pace chasers Next are late surgers. So you can see over here that speed is a little better than power, but not so much. You still want a lot of power, especially when you compare them to pace chasers who want a lot more speed than power. Late surgers are the most likely to get blocked, at least second to end closers. They also have the most efficient stamina to HP conversion. They have the best rate of it. And so you can see that late surgers need to have power. They need to have power because their whole game plan is to accelerate at the final spurt and overtake others and basically use all their energy reserves to beat the competition. Typically speaking, frontrunners will have less stamina than late surgers, and late surgers use that stamina with that power to accelerate and overtake them at the end. This is considered a high risk and high reward strategy because they are the most likely to get blocked out of most other racers. Late surgers are very reliant on vision skills as well as skills that allow them to maneuver. So any skills like this are ones that allow them to maneuver. As well, you have skills like this that allow Umas to expand their field of vision and avoid getting boxed in. These are some examples of late surgers, including Vodka, who is not listed here. The last strategy we're talking about is the end closer strategy. This is built pretty much exactly similar to a late surger, and they are the most likely to get blocked more than late surgers are. They have the second most efficient stamina to HP conversion, and they start to pick up pace starting from like halfway to like 60% of the race course. End closers do have pretty good skills, and that's to compensate for the fact that they are in a very bad position throughout most of the race. End closers are really bad for sprint distances, with a few exceptions not yet in global. I think Durandal is a sprint runner who likes the end closer strategy. And this is the only preferred end closer at this point in the game. Next, we're going to go over quick and easy deck building with examples. There are many different builds that exist, and you can change them depending on an Uma's specific growth rates. That's over here. If you take a look at their details, these are the growth rates. As well, you have to take into consideration their inherent skills and unique skills and scripted career events. As well, more experienced trainers are going to have a bias towards putting a lot more speed cards in their deck because they usually understand when and how they should time other trainings. What I'm going to go over is a step-by-step guide that can help start beginners off in the right direction, and what you're meant to do is kind of adjust accordingly depending on what you find easier with raising that horse girl. Here is a step-by-step guide. So you're going to want to start with all speed cards as a base. It is the most important stat. Every step below will replace speed cards unless otherwise stated. The second step is to add one wit card. Wit cards are good because it improves the wit training, which gives you energy as opposed to taking it away, but also gives you stats. You want to probably have 2 wit cards if you're raising a front runner because, again, they're very wit reliant and they need to fight for that first position. This is especially important if you're trying to raise a PvP horse. Number 3, add 1 stamina card to clear medium distances and consider adding another one for long distances. You can remove 1 wit card if you're going to add 2 stamina cards in the deck. Fourth step is to add 1 or 2 power cards if raising a late surger or end closer. So again, if you're raising a front runner or anything like that, you don't need to add any power cards because power training comes naturally from speed training. But late surgers and end closers, if you're planning on using that strategy during the career, which you don't have to, by the way, you can switch other strategies. But if you are planning on using that strategy during the career, you want to have 1 or 2 power cards in order to build that up. Finally, step number 5, and this is totally optional. This is my preference. I would add 1 friend card, like the SSR Tazuna or the SR Aoi, if the Uma is moody and you're having trouble managing that mood. The friend cards have good events that allow you to improve mood, usually by like twice, and also gives you energy and skill points. If you want help deciding between the cards, what you want to do is inspect each card's skill hints and career events. So you can see over here, Silent Suzuka has a lot of skills that benefit front runners, and these are skills that won't activate unless your Uma is using a front runner strat. That being said, she is still a good stat stick, but if you're having trouble deciding between cards, then you want to use Silent Suzuka when you're trying to build a front runner. Also, make sure you are checking out the career events. These are usually the high roll and very valuable skills that the card features. So Unrestrained is one of them. And if you look at something like Super Creek, that is where you can see the Swinging Maestro. Otherwise, always look for specialty priority to improve consistency. That's this effect over here. You have specialty priority. It allows the support card or the training partner to arrive at their training spot more likely than others. Here are some example deck lists. So this one is Sakura Bakshino. She has all speed over here. But if I wanted to build Sakura Bakshino for PvP, I would take out this one, I would take out this one, and put 2 wit cards instead. Notice as well that we don't have any power cards, but we still managed to get C+ power rating because speed training gives power as well. This build also has way too much stamina and guts than necessary. Maruzensky is my other example here. She is a front runner like Sakura Bakshino, but she wants to run medium tracks, and I also want to be able to put her in long distance tracks. For that reason, I did go ahead and add Super Creek as the 1 stamina card. We have the 1 wit card for better wit training, and then 4 speed cards. The next example is Vodka. Vodka is a late surger, and this is the way I built her. If you do have a good focus in power cards, you actually don't need stamina cards that much because power training improves stamina as well. So that's why you see 3 power cards in this deck. And finally, we're going to be talking about Gold Ship. Gold Ship, this is the one I won URA with. You have a lot of speed, you have a lot of power, and a lot of stamina. So the most challenging thing about raising Gold Ship typically is the fact that you do have to balance all 3 of these strats if you're doing the end closing strategy. You could also put Gold Ship and run them as a front runner. Remember, changing the style only affects the wit, but it doesn't affect skill activation rate. So I've seen plenty of people build Gold Ship as a front runner instead, and that sometimes does give them better success. I typically like to build Umas the way they're kind of intended, especially when considering building them for PvP. So in this deck, I put a wit card. I also put a Tazuna friend card. That's because I was a little worried that this Gold Ship would be a little hard to raise. And then I went ahead and put a balance of 2 power cards with 2 speed cards. The reason why Gold Ship doesn't have a stamina card, despite favoring long tracks, is because if you do look at Gold Ship's growth rate, she has 20% extra stamina gain whenever you train it. And so because power training gives stamina and because of this growth rate, I can pretty much ignore having a stamina card. Finally, we have Haruurara. Haruurara is everyone's favorite dirt runner. Haruurara, being a late surger, needs a lot of power, and she doesn't need that much stamina because she only likes to run sprint and mile tracks. So this build is a little interesting. I do have the friend card here, but I would probably take that out for a power card instead. But notice I do have a guts card, and the reason why I have a guts card is because Grass Wonder has good mile and late surger skills. Also, guts training isn't the worst thing for Haruurara because late surgers want speed and power, and guts training basically gives a mix of that. But yeah, in hindsight, I would go ahead and take out Tazuna for another power card, or maybe even another guts card. That's it for stats and strats. Let me know what other Umamusume guides you want to see in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this content, and I'll see you on the next one.